A phone call comes to an emergency center in South Korea. It is a child's voice. He is on a ferry, the Sewol. The ferry is traveling to Jeju Island, a place for holidays. There are 476 people on the ship. Most are students and teachers on a school trip. The person answering the call asks the boy to give the phone to the captain. Why is a child calling if the ship is sinking? Why did an adult not call? At first, not everyone on the boat understands the danger. The ship starts to lean to one side. Some young people shout like it is fun, like a ride at an amusement park. But soon everyone knows it is very serious. People start to panic. The big ship, weighing 6,800 tons, sinks quickly. It is a terrible tragedy. The boy who called for help dies. 300 other people also die. Most of them are young students. The whole country is in shock and very sad. How could this happen? Who made this terrible thing happen? At the beginning, people blame the captain and the other people working on the ship. They say the crew did a bad job and were scared. The captain told passengers to stay in their rooms while the ship was sinking, but he and some crew members left the ship. They saved themselves and left the students behind. The president of South Korea said their actions were like murder. The captain receives a life sentence in prison. The Korean Coast Guard is also blamed. Their rescue was slow and not well done. But this is not the full story. Investigators look into the accident. They find out the ferry was changed. It was changed illegally so it could carry more cargo, more things to sell. More cargo means more money. The ferry was carrying too much weight, much more than was safe. It was very dangerous. People become very angry. Someone chose money over the safety of people. Who owned this ferry? Who is responsible? In South Korea, it can be difficult to find out who is responsible when a company does something wrong. Big family companies called chaebols own many smaller companies. It is like a big network. This makes it hard to see who really controls things. These families are very rich and powerful. Some say they have too much power. Did the owners of the ferry cause this tragedy? 2. Big Korean companies. After the Korean War ended in the 1950s, South Korea faced many problems. It was one of the poorest countries anywhere in the world. Many buildings and roads were destroyed. People did not have much money or food. But South Korea did not stay poor. It grew very fast and became an economic success story. Today, it has one of the world's biggest economies, around the 14th largest in the world. How did this happen? A big reason was selling products to other countries. Companies in South Korea started making things that people around the world wanted to buy. This is called an export-led economy. Large groups of companies helped make this growth possible. In Korean, these groups are called chaebol. A chaebol is not just one company. It is many different businesses all controlled by one single family. Usually, the father passes the control to his son or daughter, and the business stays in the family for many years. These powerful families are like dynasties. The South Korean government played a big part in starting the chaebols. After the war, leaders wanted to rebuild the country quickly. They chose some families and gave them money and special help. This capital, or starting money, helped the families start businesses in important areas, like building things and making basic goods. These family businesses did very well. They grew bigger and started doing many more things. They moved into areas like technology, finance, making cars, and building ships. In only a few decades, the chaebols helped change South Korea from a poor country into a world leader in industry. This amazing change is often called the miracle on the Han River. The Han River flows through Seoul, the capital city. Many famous international companies are chaebols. Samsung is a very famous chaebol. Hyundai, which makes cars, is also a chaebol. LG, known for electronics and home appliances, is another one. SK Group is also a very large chaebol. These family-run groups operate all over the world. Chaebols are extremely important to South Korea's economy. The money made by all the chaebols together makes up a very large part of the country's wealth. Samsung is a good example of how big they are. Samsung alone is responsible for a huge piece of South Korea's total economic activity, called GDP. In the year 2024, experts thought Samsung might cause about half of all the economic growth in the whole country. Because they control so much money and provide so many jobs, these chaebol families have great power and influence in South Korea. 3. Problems with rich families. For a long time, people in South Korea liked the big family companies, the chaebols. They helped the country grow rich. But later, people started to worry about them. In 1997, there was a big money problem in Asia. This event showed that it was dangerous for South Korea's economy to depend too much on just a few large family companies. Some big chaebols almost lost all their money. After this, people started to see more problems with the chaebol families. News stories reported chaebols breaking rules. Some leaders took money that was not theirs. Others gave money secretly to government people to get special help. Sometimes they did not treat their workers well. The government often did not punish them hard enough. People started to feel angry about this. One famous story showed how some chaebol family members acted. In 2014, Heather Cho, a vice president at Korean Air and daughter of the boss, got very angry on a plane. A flight attendant gave her macadamia nuts in a bag, not on a plate. Ms. Cho shouted at the worker. She made another worker kneel down and say sorry. Then she ordered the plane, which was ready to fly, to go back to the gate. The worker had to leave the plane. This nut rage story made many South Koreans very angry. For them, it showed that some rich family members felt they were too important and could do anything they wanted. People talked a lot about it online. Korean Air first said Ms. Cho was just doing her job checking the cabin service, but people did not agree. They remembered other problems with her family too. Her brother had pushed an old woman. Her father had broken tax rules. Ms. Cho herself had her children born in the U.S., so they did not have to join the Korean Army later. Heather Cho had to say sorry and leave her job. She went to court and got a short time in prison, but she did not stay there long. This event and others like it made people worry more about the chaebol's power. These rich families often had a very close relationship with the government. They received help, like lower taxes or special treatment. Government leaders also listened to the chaebol families. This close connection worried many people. They felt the families had too much control and did not always follow the same rules as everyone else. 4. The sad ferry story. The Sewol ferry story is very sad. We remember the ship that sank in the sea on its way to Jeju Island. Jeju is a popular place for holidays in South Korea. There were 476 people on the ferry that day. A very large number were high school students. They were excited about their school trip, traveling with their teachers. The day turned terrible when the ferry started to lean to one side and sink. It was confusing and scary for everyone on board. In the end, it was a great tragedy. More than 300 people lost their lives. Most of them were the young students. The whole country felt deep sadness and shock. People needed to know why this happened and who was responsible. Initial reports blamed the captain and his crew. The captain told passengers to stay inside their cabins even as the ship was going down. Then, he and some crew members escaped the ferry, leaving many people behind. People were angry at their actions. The Coast Guard was also criticized for not rescuing people quickly enough. But investigations soon showed there were bigger problems. Investigators studied the ferry carefully. They learned that the ferry itself was not safe. It had been changed after it was built. Rooms were added and parts were changed. These changes were not legal. Why did the company change the ship? They wanted the ferry to carry much more cargo than it was designed for. Cargo is the name for goods that ships transport. More cargo meant more money for the company. These illegal changes made the ferry very heavy. It carried more than double the weight it should have. It was dangerously overloaded. This extra weight made the ship unstable. It could easily tip over, especially if it turned quickly. This showed a terrible truth. The company cared more about making extra profit than about the safety of its passengers. Making money was more important than protecting lives. This discovery made people across South Korea very angry. They demanded that the people who owned the ferry company must face justice. But finding out who really owned the company was not simple. Who were the real owners? In South Korea, large businesses, sometimes called conglomerates, often have very complicated structures. One family might control many different smaller companies. These complex structures can sometimes make it difficult to see who is really in charge. It can hide who is truly responsible when things go wrong. The investigators had to look very hard to find the real owners behind the ferry company. 5. Who owned the ferry? People wanted to know who owned the company that ran the Sewol ferry. After looking at company papers, the answer was found. The Yu family owned the ferry company. The head of the family was a man named Yu Byung-yoon. He was a businessman but also known for other things. He started a religious group like a church many years ago. He also liked art and took many photos of nature. He used a different name, Ahi, for his art. Yu Byung-yoon did not like to be seen in public. Some people called him the millionaire with no face because he was hard to find. He had problems in the past. Many years ago, 32 people from his religious group were found dead in a building. Police thought maybe Yu was connected to the deaths, but they could not prove it. Later, in 1992, Yu went to jail for fraud. This means he used money in a wrong way, taking it from church members for his businesses. After the Sewol ferry sank, the president of South Korea, Park Geun-hye, said Yu Byung-yoon and his family were responsible. She ordered the police to find and arrest him. It became the biggest search for a person in the country's history. Almost 10,000 police officers and even soldiers looked for Yu. They went to the main building of his religious group, but Yu was not there. Many people from his church tried to help him hide. They stood outside the building and tried to stop the police. They held up signs saying they would protect Yu Byung-yoon. Some said they would fight the police to protect him. The police searched the big building but left without finding Yu. Later, people learned he was hiding in a secret small room far away. About 2 months after the ferry sank, a farmer found a dead body in a field. The body was lying on its back. It was very old and damaged, so it was hard to know who it was at first. The body wore expensive clothes from Italy. Next to the body were empty drink bottles and a book written by Yu Byung-yoon. After checking carefully for many weeks, the police said the body was Yu Byung-yoon. But they could never find out how he died. The story became sadder when more information came out. Some government workers knew the Sewol ferry had serious safety problems before it sank, but they did not stop the ferry from sailing. It seemed they ignored the problems. Maybe they ignored the problems because the ferry company gave them nice meals and drinks. The ferry was too heavy partly because Yu Byung-yoon had put a heavy art gallery inside it. He wanted to show his own photos on the ferry. 6. The president's big mistake. After the Sewol ferry accident, many people in South Korea were very sad and angry. At first, they were angry at the ferry crew and owners, but soon their anger turned towards the government. They started to blame President Park Geun-hye. Small meetings with candles began. People gathered to remember the students who died. These meetings grew bigger and became large protests in the streets. Thousands of people held candles. They asked the government for the truth about the ferry disaster. They wanted the government to take responsibility for the slow rescue. People shouted for President Park to leave her job. The government did not listen to the protesters. Instead, they tried to stop the protests forcefully. Police used big water hoses called water cannons to push people back. They also used pepper spray, which burns the eyes. The government even secretly gathered information about the sad families of the victims. They did this to try and stop the families from speaking against the government. But the anger did not go away. In 2016, a different very big problem came out. This new problem showed that President Park was not trying to control the power of the rich chaebol families. Instead, it showed she had secret, illegal connections with them. People discovered that President Park, her close friend Choi Soon-sil, and leaders from big companies like Samsung had made secret deals. The companies gave large amounts of money to President Park's friend. This was like a bribe, giving money to get special help. For example, Samsung gave about $36 million to groups controlled by the friend. In return, President Park used her power to help Samsung. She helped Samsung with an important business change that gave the family who owns Samsung even more control over the company. This news made people furious. It looked like the president was helping rich families, not the country. Because of this big mistake and these illegal actions, President Park was forced to leave her job. She was the first South Korean president ever to be removed from office. Later, she was sentenced to spend 24 years in prison. She also had to pay a large fine. This showed that even the president could face consequences for corruption involving the powerful chaebols. 7. Samsung is very strong. The problems with President Park also involved big companies. Samsung was a very important company connected to the scandal. Samsung leaders gave a lot of money, about $36 million, to President Park's close friend. They did this because they wanted the government to help Samsung with a business deal. This deal would give the Samsung family more control over the company. The main leader of Samsung at this time was Jae-yong. People sometimes called him the Crown Prince of Samsung. Because Samsung gave this money for help, Jae-yong was arrested. Giving money for special help like this is a crime called bribery. Jae-yong went to court. The judge said he broke the law. He was sent to prison for 2.5 years. After President Park left office, South Korea got a new president, Moon Jae-in. President Moon said he would fight corruption. Corruption is when powerful people use their position dishonestly, often for money. He promised he would not give special pardons to people found guilty of corruption. A pardon means the government forgives a crime and often lets the person out of prison. But President Moon later changed his decision about Jae-yong. After Lee was in prison for only about 1 year, President Moon pardoned him. He said that South Korea's economy needed Jae-yong. Samsung is extremely important for the country's money and jobs. The president felt that Jae-yong needed to be free to lead Samsung for the good of the nation. This was not the first time a Samsung leader faced legal problems but avoided serious punishment. Jae-yong's father, the previous leader of Samsung, was also found guilty of crimes like bribery years ago. However, his father never went to prison at all. It seemed like Samsung leaders were too powerful to face the same rules as everyone else. Many South Koreans had different feelings about Jae-yong's pardon. Some were angry and thought it was unfair. They believed everyone should follow the law, even rich business leaders. But many others agreed with the president. A study showed that most people, maybe 70%, supported letting Jae-yong go. They worried about the economy. They believed that Samsung needed its leader, and if Samsung did well, the country would do well. So, Jae-yong was released from prison early. He returned to Samsung and became the main boss, the CEO of Samsung Electronics. He continues to be the richest person in South Korea. 8. The future of Korea. Chaebol families continue to hold great power in South Korea. As we learned, President Park Geun-hye faced serious charges. However, she did not complete her long prison sentence. She received a pardon after serving 5 years. The reason given was to help unite the people. In a similar way, the leader of Samsung, Jae-yong, was also let out of prison much earlier than planned. He served about 1 year for bribery. The government said his release was needed because Samsung is extremely important for South Korea's economy, especially when competing with other countries. This was not the first time a Samsung leader avoided a long sentence. His father had similar problems in the past, but never went to prison. So both the former president and the powerful business leader avoided long punishments. This situation leaves many South Koreans feeling frustrated. They see unfairness and corruption when powerful people seem above the law. There is anger about the lack of real accountability. But at the same time, there is worry. People depend on the chaebols for jobs and economic growth. They fear that punishing these leaders too hard could hurt the whole country's economy. This creates a constant tension between wanting justice and needing economic stability. Even after all the scandals, getting a job at a big chaebol company is still a major goal for many people. These companies, like Samsung or Hyundai, offer higher salaries and more benefits than most other businesses. Every year, hundreds of thousands of South Koreans apply for jobs at Samsung, hoping for a better future. This shows how much influence these companies still have on people's lives and dreams. Because these families control so much of the nation's wealth and business, a difficult question remains. Is real change and reform truly possible in South Korea? Can the country find a way to reduce corruption and increase fairness when these powerful families have such a strong hold on the economy? What do you think is the most important step South Korea should take next?
Hey there! Just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really, really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank you.